Welcome to video number 4 of how to speak and read New Testament Greek. Before I get started on the passages for this video, I just wanted to repeat that it will really help if you can work through the Language Transfer Modern Greek videos. Just Google that, Language Transfer Modern Greek, and it will come up on YouTube. And again, that really just helps with getting the feel for the language, the patterns and the sounds and the kind of rhythms. So another thing that really helps is getting the Logos app. And if you have that, you can pull up a New Testament text that is in the original Greek. And you can see the passages that I present, and also you can see other passages, and you can see the context, and you can just kind of scan it for words that look familiar. And you can also click on a word if you want to know what it means, and for a verb, what tense it is, what person, all that information. So you can have the Greek text, and then you can also on Logos have whatever translation, English translation that you want, so you can have those side by side to compare. So now we are going to look at the first of two passages that we're going to go over in this video. And I'm still trying mostly to stick to the present tense. And in the next video, probably I will talk a bit about how to form some past tenses. So, the first passage comes from John 1:25, and this is it. Tiun baptizis, isi uk o Christos, ude Ilias, ude o prophetis? Apokrithi aftis o Ioannis legon, ego baptizo en idati. So, looking at the first little bit there, tiun baptizis. Well, first off, this is a question. If you didn't notice that from the tone of my voice, you can also tell because at the very end of that first sentence, there's a semicolon, which is a question mark in Greek. So, tiun baptizis. Ti is why, and un is therefore. And then if you look at baptizis, I'll give you a second to think about other verbs that we have seen and the endings. If you can remember the verb, who's doing the action of the verb if the ending is is. So that would be you. So are you baptizing, or you are baptizing is what this means. So what would be I am baptizing? Yes, that's baptizo. And what would be he is baptizing? That would be baptizi. So the next little bit is E is if. Now later on there's another E with an accent, and that's different. So E here without the accent is if. Si is the pronoun you. And just to fill that out a little bit, we had in previous videos, ego is I, and then si would be you. So if you, uk I, uk is a negation, not. This takes different forms. It could be u, it can be uk. And I here with the accent is you are. So we have seen, this is the verb, okay, backing up, this is the verb to be. So you are. So uk I, you are not. So all the way we have I, si, uk, I. If you are not. Now, the si there, the actual word you, is not needed. I alone means you are. So as we've seen with ero, in passages where we saw ero imi, I am, is literally I am. So there's repetition of the I. Similarly, here, when we have si, I, it's you are. So there's emphasis on the you. So it's you are not. So from the very beginning, why, therefore, are you baptizing if you are not? And before we go on, I just wanted to say one more thing about that verb to be. So we've seen imi, I am, and here we have I, you are, and we also had he is. I'll give you a second to try and remember that. So he, she, it is estin. And then completing the sentence, if you are not, O Christos, probably guess that's the Christ. O, the definite article, the Christ, if you're not the Christ. Oude, and now we have oude something else. Oude is kind of an interesting word. It means nor. So if you're not the Christ, or nor someone else or someone else. But if you want to break this down, it's kind of interesting. It's literally not and, or and not. So the, therefore, the second part can mean and. By standing alone, it means and the u, as we've just seen, is in kind of a negating particle. So it's not and. So that's just kind of interesting. You could maybe guess if you didn't know what oude meant. So if you're not the Christ, oude Elias, Elijah, oude, or not o prophetis, if you're not the prophet. So before moving on, that whole sentence was, why are you baptizing if you are not the Christ, or Elijah, or the prophet? And then the next sentence, apokrithi. Now, apokrithi is a verb, and it is not in the present tense. It means he answered, and it's a past tense. So I'm just going to tell you, just because it's interesting, kind of how this verb breaks down. We won't talk about how to form the past tense until the next video. But in this video, about this particular verb, apokrithi, as I said, is past. He said. He answered. But the present form of this verb, I answer, would be apokrinome. And apokrinome is interesting to me because, like I said, it means I answer. But if you break it down into its parts, it is formed from apo plus krinome. Krinome, in turn, is the passive form of krino, which means I judge. So that gives krinome the meaning I am being judged, passive. The ome ending that comes on the end of krino here, as I just said, is sometimes the passive voice. It can also indicate what's called the middle voice in Kini Greek. We do not have the middle voice in English, which makes it a bit hard to understand what this is, but simply with a middle verb, the action somehow begins and ends in the subject itself. So if krinome had a middle voice sense to it, it would mean something like I judge myself, or I am being judged by myself. So just to be clear, this kind of detective work on breaking this word down is pretty much guesswork on my part. Informed guesswork, to be sure. I mean, the words as I've given them here to you in their broken down form do mean what I say it means. Krinomes, I'm just totally throwing out a few ideas there. I did look up krinome, and krinome is given as the passive form of krino. So that's a fact. However, in this case, we're not really looking at krinome all by itself. It's part of the bigger word apokrinome. So it's potentially possible that it has more of a middle voice reading. So to sum up here, apokrinome means I answer, and I went into the parts, the underlying parts of the word, just to give a more nuanced understanding of that definition, which is something like I speak from being judged, or I speak from judging myself, as kind of the underlying derivation somehow, maybe, of I answer. So I thought that was interesting and kind of just an aside. Alright, so we have apokrithi, which means he answered. Now, who answered? We don't have a lot of context on this passage because I am trying to keep it simple. So it's kind of like lifted out the parts that are easier to understand. But still, it's a legitimate question when you have a verb. Who's the subject? In this case, we have two. If you were just figuring it out on your own, you have two kind of choices. You have aftis, and then you have o Ioannis. And both are nouns. Aftis is, so utos, aftos, this just means he, she, or it, and it has different endings depending on whether it is masculine, feminine, neuter, and singular, plural, and then also the cases, whether it's nominative or accusative, for instance. And then you have o Ioannis, which is John. Again, unlike English, nouns, all nouns are going to have different endings depending on how they function in the sentence. And proper nouns like Ioannis are no exception. So Ioannis can also have different endings depending on how it functions in the sentence. In this case, Ioannis is in the nominative form, and aftis is in the dative form, dative plural. So we know that o Ioannis is the subject. Another kind of, I mean, this one's really not hard to figure out because aftis is also plural, and if we look at the verb apokrithi, it is singular. You wouldn't know that at this point, but at some point you would. So we know that o Ioannis is speaking. So o Ioannis, apokrithi, answers aftis. I just said this is dative plural, so it's he, she, it, plural, they, and then because it's dative, it is going to be to them. So Ioannis, John, answered them. Legon. Now this is another one which, I don't know if we've seen it exactly, this word, but you've seen that ending on verbs, and you know that lego means I say. So legon is a participle. It's a present participle with the omega ni ending. So lego means I say, legon means saying. We've seen this with opistevon, the believing one. So here we have leron, saying. And what is he saying? He is saying, I, ego, vaptizo. We've seen vaptizis, which means, giving you a second, it means you baptize. So vaptizo is, with the omega ending, I baptize. So we have I baptize, again, emphasis on I, because when you look at the context and look further on, John is contrasting how he baptizes with how Jesus baptizes. So I baptize en idati. En means in, and idati is water. Now en, as a preposition, the following noun needs to be in the dative case, so idati is the dative case of the word water, and I'm just going to tell you the regular nominative case because I'm sure you will see it elsewhere. So water, the nominative form is to idor, and idati is the neuter dative form of idor. So just a real quick aside, idor, if you kind of like slur, it's like odor, idor, odor. So it's a very old root, Proto-Indo-European. Just if you're kind of curious about these things, as I am, to me that's kind of interesting. You can even hear it there. Modern Greek has a very different word for water, and I'll probably talk about that later. I'll tell you what it is now, and then later on why it's so different. The word in modern Greek is nero. Okay, so on to the next passage, which is from John 1:29. It's just, I'm just skipping over some of the parts that are a little more difficult, so we can handle some of the easier portions. Ti apavrion vlepi ton isun erchomenon prosavton, ke lei ide o amnos tu theu o eron tin amartian tu cosmu. All right, the first two words here, ti epavrion, mean the next day or on the next day. The article ti here is in the dative case, which gives the meaning on the next day. Interestingly, in modern Greek, the word for tomorrow is avrio, so very similar. Vlepi, the verb here, and the E ending, I'll give you a second to think, is that I, you, or he? So the E ending means the subject is he, and vlepo, with the omega ending, means I see. And so vlepi means he sees. And this is the same word in modern Greek, vlepo, I see. So we have ti epavrion vlepi, the next day he sees. What does he see? Ton isun, and you probably can guess that's Jesus. But the ending on there, the on, and then the ni on isun, means that it is in the accusative case, and it needs to be because it's what he is seeing. We didn't talk about who the subject is here, but if you look in the context, it's John. The next word here is erchomenon, and erchomenon is a present participle. It means coming, so it is from the verb I come, and that verb is erchome. Erchome means I come or I am coming in both Kini and in modern Greek. As I said, erchomenon is the present participle of this verb erchome, and in this form, erchomenon, it's in the accusative case because it's part of that description of what John saw. He saw Jesus coming. So both Jesus and the participle coming need to be in the accusative case. So the nominative case of erchomenon is erchomenos. We've seen present participles before, but they don't look like this. The ones we have seen before have been for verbs in the active voice, verbs like meno and lego, which are in the active voice and have omega for first person endings, and they formed present participles by dropping the omega and replacing it with omega ni. The ome verbs are not active voice, they're middle or passive voice. We saw krinome and apokrinome earlier, which has this form as well. And they, the middle or passive voice verbs ending in ome form their present participles differently. So to form the present participle for these verbs, you take off the ome and you add omenos. So erchome becomes erchomenos with that different ending and also the switch in accent. Moving on in the translation, John saw Jesus coming pros afton, and pros means towards. Afton is the accusative form of the, I guess that's a pronoun, aftos, which is him or he. So he, and then you put the aftos would be he, and afton would be him, the accusative form. I'm just going to stop there and just quickly recap. So far we have on the morrow or the next day, he sees Jesus coming towards him. Ke lei, and ke lei, I'll give you a second there since we've seen that one. He says, Ide, which means behold. It's one of the forms of behold or see. O amnos, that is the lamb in the nominative form. So we have o, the article, the, amnos, lamb. Tu theu, and this is the genitive form of theos. We have seen the genitive form before, masculine genitive. So we have o theos as the nominative, and then the u ending on there, on the article and the noun. Tu theu means of. So instead of just God, it's of God. There's not a separate word here, there's no of, but it's translated the Lamb of God because the u ending tells us that it's genitive, meaning of. O eron, so we've seen this, the on ending is the active participle of a verb, and the verb here is ero, which means I take away. And then we have this construction which we've seen before with the article in front of the participle. So it's he who. So this would be translated the Lamb of God who is taking away, or who takes away. What does he take away? He takes away tin amartian tu cosmu. So, what is tin amartian? You may have guessed with the ni ending on here that this is in the accusative, and you'd be right. So it's in the accusative because it's the object of takeaway. And the nominative form of this verb is I amartia. Amartia means sin. So that's the nominative form, as I just said. I'm going to just take this opportunity to quickly review the articles that we've seen so far in both the nominative and the accusative cases. So those articles are o, I, and to. O masculine, I feminine, to neuter in the nominative. And then the accusative forms of these articles are ton, masculine, teen, feminine, and to neuter. The neuter doesn't change. So you can see that the ni on there is a nice little flag or indication that something is in the accusative form. Often a noun, the noun that follows this article, whatever article you have, will also have a ni on it. It's not true of all nouns, but a lot of them. So, like I said, it's just a little flag to think, this might be accusative. I like to remember that the accusative case is used for an object of the noun by remembering that the verb accuses or acts on the object. And in Greek, as we've seen, the ni ending is often used in the accusative form of articles and nouns, and you can kind of continue this accusing or pointing mnemonic device by seeing that letter, the ni, if you turn it on its side, it kind of looks like an arrow pointing or accusing. In modern Greek, in the nominative and the accusative cases, these articles that I've shown you are the same. So that's really nice. The nouns, the endings on the nouns in the accusative case, however, are not going to follow the same pattern in modern Greek. So this last phrase in its entirety then is tin amartian tu kosmou. And we just looked at tin amartian, the sin, and tu kosmou. Kosmou, if you look at that, maybe not in that form, but in the nominative form of that noun is kosmos, o kosmos. And that's our word cosmos, and it means world, universe, or all of humankind. So again, the nominative form is o kosmos, so the form here, we've seen these kinds of endings before. So tu kosmou, or let me say that a little better, tu kosmou is the genitive form of the article and the noun. So that u ending there is genitive for the masculine article and noun, and you'll just see that ending a lot. It means of the world. Again, there's not the word of, just those endings on there tells you it's of the world. So, tin amartian tu kosmou is the sin of the world. So, just to wrap it up here, I'm going to give the entirety of this last passage, John 1:29, in Greek first and then in English. Ti epavrion vlepiton isun erchomenon prosafton ke lei ide o amnos tu theu o eron tin amartian tu kosmou. Before I give the translation, which we already have done, but I'm just going to do it all in one place together, I'll just say that the verbs here, vlepi and lei, are present, as we noticed in the translation. When we translate these into English, though English, to make a kind of more understandable translation, translates these as past, and that's just a difference in the conventions between Greek and English. If we translate with the present tense in these circumstances, it just sounds kind of strange in English. But the Greek writers, and I'm just going to take this straight from the preface of my NASB Bible, Greek authors frequently used the present tense for the sake of heightened vividness, thereby transporting their readers in imagination to the actual scene at the time of occurrence. So the Greek writers are talking about something that's happened already, but they just say it is happening so that you as a listener are just in the scene at the moment and it feels more real to you. So, that being said, I'm going to translate this whole thing, which we've already done, but again, in one place. On the next day, he sees, or he saw, Jesus coming toward him, and he says, or he said, "Behold, the Lamb of God who is taking away, or who takes away, the sin of the world." That is the end of this video. Thank you for watching.